Welcome. I'm Brian McMillan, Executive Editor of the Palm Coast Observer, and I have today with me David Ayres, the President of Flagler Broadcasting. Thank you for joining me, David.
Thank you for the invitation.
So normally we're together, we spend an hour together every Friday on Free For All Friday, and WNZF have been for several years. So it's kind of fun to be on this side and I get to grill you with some questions. I do, it's a lot, in the WNZF studio, I'm always twisting. Have you noticed that? I kind of like in the spinny chair, and I try not to do that when we have video.
Because you're nervous.
I have video, yeah, exactly. So I wanted to ask you, what do you get to do now? Do you get to do whatever you want now that you're president of Flagler Broadcasting?
Pretty much,
yeah. Have you tried to do anything crazy in the office yet?
Well, we pretty well have already done crazy things as vice president. So with the partnership with the owners, Jim Martin, Tricia, and Gary, those are we're the full owners of the radio station. So they, from the very on, have given me a lot of freedom to do things, and so we will continue to. Operationally, there won't be a big difference in anything that we're doing. Just continue having fun and trying to do good things.
Very good. Well, congratulations on the
Thank you.
Promotion. One thing I've learned about you from co-hosting Free For All Friday for all these years is that I've noticed that behind the tough exterior that you present, you're really a softie at heart. Because I've noticed that probably a couple times a month you kind of like choke up almost a little bit on the radio. So are you a softie?
Sometimes. I didn't know I had a hard show.
Well, I just said that to provide some contrast. But
I think, great radio is about people, and people are about emotion and what they think and feel and what they do, and sure. So, emotion is great.
Yeah, absolutely. So people may not realize when they listen to the show what it looks like in the studio. You're sitting there with a board, and there's so many buttons and dials and knobs and everything. To me, as a someone doesn't know anything about radio production, it looks very confusing. And I was wondering if you have any good horror stories of messing up on the air.
During Free For All?
Not so
much as being a DJ with music. And let's see. Well, one probably that pops to my head, I don't know why, I was a DJ in Tampa at WDAE FM, and it was kind of an album rock station. And every Sunday morning we had a thing called Wax Tracks, where people could record the album uninterrupted, and then we would take a break, flip the disc over, and then play the second half. And just being a young guy in my 20s there at that point, I'm watching it, didn't have to do anything, just watch it, and a piece of fuzz lands on the record, right? And I see it's going around, and the tone arm gets closer and closer, and they're very sensitive, if you know how a floating tone arm would be. And I'm like, oh my God, it's going to hit this thing, and Tampa Bay is recording this new Moody Blues album, and so I got to do something. So I go, and the tone arm goes, and phones light up, and it was like a lot of like, what do we do now? So yeah, that was probably my biggest nightmare with having that effect. But
all from a little bit of fuzz.
That's right. One little piece of fuzz messed up a lot of people's lives.
Very good. I actually listened to WDAE. I lived in Bradenton for a couple of years, and I listened to the Tampa Bay Rays on that station.
Oh, yeah.
So very cool. So how has radio changed since you started? When did you start, and where? How have things changed?
First, real Cleveland, Ohio, kind of a big radio town, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, all that, and in the 70s. The guys I hung out with were into media and TV and radio, and so got a chance to kind of develop because at that point AM radio was it. There was hardly anything on FM. It was non-commercial, whatever. So we got a hold of a guy that had a FM station, which eventually turned. He said, "Just do whatever you want. Nobody's listening to FM anyway." And so some of my upperclassmen started, which today is actually WMMS radio in Cleveland, which is kind of an iconic and big reason why the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is there, because it was an FM station that gave up-and-coming young artists that couldn't get airplay on AM Top 40 a chance to be heard, and relationships and all that. So that was where it started back real early on. And then moved to Tampa to go to University of South Florida and met people in radio, and I was unloading trucks at J.C. Penney's at my first job, just to have to make something happen, and then got a job and on the air and just doing things. So it's really been a great experience and having fun and doing what you like.
So besides the records, how else have things changed?
Yeah, no fuzz can ruin a thing by today's.
I'm sure there's something that can ruin a show, though.
I'm sure. The technology has changed, but if you look back at it, just like anything in any business, if right now you look at what you're doing with Zoom meetings and all this technology and digital platforms and things, I think if you went back 30, 40 years, you probably would scare yourself out of doing it. But it's a gradual spoon feeding of education and technology and learning how to use things, and it's just so much easier. The broadcasting business is a lot easier today in a lot of ways. So technology has always been radio's friend.
As far as the production of it, you mean?
That even just like newspapers, it's content and distribution, and so you do the written word, and we do the spoken word. And so our distribution, just like you with the Observer Online, with us streaming, mobile apps, it's taken radio to new levels. Like, we don't care how you listen, just listen. But it takes radio today way beyond how far a tower in a cornfield would reach with smart speakers in homes, where you just say, "Hey Alexa, tune in and play WNZF," and boom, there it is anywhere that there is. So it's been a lot different, but a lot better.
Have you ever been to the top of the tower?
No. I have had drone pictures from the top of the tower, and no, I would not. But
that's sufficient.
From the top of the tower, you can see all of Flagler County.
Yeah, pretty cool. So you mentioned that it's about human emotion, and that makes good radio. What do you love about radio? You've been doing this a long time. What makes you excited to go in and be on the air?
I think primarily we're an entertainment medium. We're not a news medium primarily. You are news medium, and we entertain with music stations and weather and inform. So I think the welding of entertainment and informing and being local is what really makes it fun. And you feel like you're helping people and helping people to be a voice and be heard. When you read the story that a city councilman said this, and then when you read it, you're like, oh my gosh, then when you hear it, it might change the way you read it when you hear the person's sincerity, when you hear just what was really meant there. I think there's a lot to be learned by reading and listening.
Mm-hmm. So there's 6 radio stations in Flagler Broadcasting. What's the future? You gonna have more?
Well, we're always looking. Never thought we'd have 6. It's kind of like you and your kids you have. You didn't know you.
Only 5.
Oh, okay. I was going to say you didn't know you were going to have 8. But just opportunity comes up where we started with 1. Coming up on 14 years ago, WNZF. There were no radio stations here, no newspapers here, really. Had an opportunity for 2, and then 3, then 4, then 5. Next thing you're adding bedrooms on, and so now we have 6 radio stations. If opportunity comes up, sure, we would consider adding more to our home.
Very good. So let's talk about events. What did your company get out of all the work you put into a concert at the airport or something like Creekside Festival? I saw you at Creekside Festival. You mentioned this on the last show. You're out there kind of helping with getting tickets and everything, and it just is a monumental task. So what do you feel like you get out of those events? Are they money makers?
Sometimes not. But even when they're not, as a promoter, I think the number one thing that any good promoter has is just a great feeling of happiness when you see people having a good time, when you see people show up with their kids, or like I said, it was pet friendly, the Creekside, and people dressed up their dogs with scarves and sunglasses and their tongues hanging out the window and the little kids in the back seat and everything. I mean, that really, you're like, wow, if we can have a positive effect for a few hours on thousands of people, that's a big reward.
Mm-hmm. See, this is why I love you, the soft side of David Ayres.
It is.
It's good stuff. So you often talk about shifting to politics. Last couple questions here. You often talk about confirmation bias.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that as a society we're more susceptible to it now than we used to be, or?
No, I think God wired our brains to have cognitive biases, because I think this is my whole theory, so I don't know how much science or anything is with it, but if we were all the same, our species would have been wiped out a long time ago. We would have all gone off the cliff like the lemmings do or something. So I think we're made to divide up into different tribes, and I think that makes the species healthy. And I think it's always been that way. And I think now with social media and faster communication and things, it's maybe ramped up a little bit, but we all have cognitive biases. And I think once we realize that, like if you have a bias where, a lot of people go, no, I'm not biased. Well, that's being biased, because you do have a bias, but you're biased. But we only search out things that support our bias. We only believe things that support our bias. And I think that's something to really be aware of, so that if we can understand somebody's bias, we can say, well, I understand how you feel. And if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. I think it's legitimate, just because that's honestly how you feel. And for us to understand somebody different than us, I think that's helpful.
I said confirmation bias, so I'll have to.
Cognitive.
I'll have to research that more. But yeah. So last question, are you looking forward to the 2022 election season?
I really am. Yeah. I think, I'm sure the voting will be accurate for the most part, and people that are supposed to win will win, and people that are supposed to lose will lose. I have faith in our elections here in Flagler County, and I think in the state of Florida, we've got great election teams and things. And locally, I think it's exciting to see who comes forward and runs for office, and who are incumbents, and how they defend what they've done, and how they try to sell themselves back to the community. And I think it's real healthy, and I think 2022 is going to be a really great year for the country and for Flagler County.
It's exciting to somebody that you didn't know very well, then they run and they win. All of a sudden, they're right there in the spotlight, and they're a sort of fixture in the community for their term. So we always get together for election night, and it always feels like almost like a sporting event, like you're waiting to see who won. So for that side of it, I think it'll be they're always fun. So. Mm-hmm.
It kind of is a sporting event.
Yeah, it is. I mean, as far as like
got winners and losers and competitors and people cheering. So I guess that's all the ingredients of a sporting event.
Yeah. Well, David, thank you very much for joining me. It's been fun to be put you on the other side of the interview, and thank you everyone for joining us.